Welcome to Chicago Bulls Chat with C-Red UK. This podcast is part of the Fans First Sports Network. Wherever or however you're listening, make sure to rate, review and subscribe. It helps us out and means you never miss another episode. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the thumbs up button and leave some comments for us to get back to. And for all the C-Red UK action, check out the Discord channel and across the socials. Now, over to your hosts, Matt Hearn and Neill Dunn.
Welcome back. I'm Matt, and I am actually joined by Neill. Been a while. How are we doing, Neill?
Remember me? I'm good. How was your holiday?
Needed. I could do with still being on it, to be fair. It's been a bit chaotic since been back.
Yeah.
As I know yours has as well.
Yes, it has.
But yeah, I think we both needed it. We both had a little bit of a break off the socials and a bit of a break from Bulls, I think. But I think we're ready to go again now, aren't we?
Yeah, that's what it takes is a week or so away from it. You start kind of feeling starvation for it again, don't you?
Yeah. Obviously, I did drop an episode, a solo episode, should I say, last week. Just a YouTube only one. So if you are listening on the audio, yeah, head over to YouTube and hit the subscribe and watch the video. It's only a short one. Just covering the schedule because that obviously dropped while you was still on holiday. I was back by that point. And yeah, a bit of news to cover, but we've got a special guest tonight, so we'll cover it possibly with that special guest. And yeah, that special guest is Tony Gill of NBC Sports Chicago / Bulls Talk / every other podcast that he does.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll send it to our merch ad, and when we come back, we will have Tony Gill with us. Help support the podcast and the brand at C-Red UK by heading to our merch site, where you'll find a variety of designs on things like mugs, t-shirts and hoodies, including our Bulls Ellis and Flop of the Fro, with plenty more designs still to come. Link is in the description.
So our special guest, as we said, is Tony Gill of NBC Sports and Bulls Talk podcast. Tony, you're very welcome to us here at C-Red UK. We've been trying to make this happen for a while, and we're very excited to have you on with us. How are you keeping?
Good. It's it's funny. Yeah, you guys reached out. As the time I was having a child, and now another major twists and turns. NBC Sports Chicago is kind of going away. So it's very interesting how this stuff's worked out, but I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, brilliant. That's actually something we were going to touch on. I weren't entirely sure how much you'd be able to talk about that, but first of all, for anyone that's been living under a rock and isn't aware of who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do. You've touched on the fact that NBC Sports is going away, so obviously there's different things coming up in your future. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yeah. So Tony Gill, I've been a producer and kind of Bulls influencer, I guess you would say, for about 9 years now. Before working at NBC Sports Chicago, I was at 670 The Score, the best local radio station in Chicago, in my opinion. But yeah, full-time producing, did some slight hosting as well, and then making that transition over to podcast producers, my official title over here at NBC Sports Chicago. It has been for the last 5 years. So it's been fun, chatting, like you mentioned before in the intro, Bulls Talk podcast, with my guys, Jason Goff, Casey Johnson, Kevin Bulldog Anderson, Will Perdue, Kendall Gill, where we just kind of discuss the team and like you guys do here, no different, and just have a good time and try and get some laughs out of it, considering just the very interesting times the Bulls are in now. So that's kind of what I've been doing and what I'm doing now.
Yeah, excellent. Myself and Matt are both avid listeners of Bulls Talk. I know I think you recently read out a question during the mailbag episode from Matt that Matt sent in as well. So we appreciated that also. Okay, so talk a little bit about the Bulls then. What's your take on the off-season moves that were made or even weren't made that you would have liked to have seen made? And what do you think of it going forward?
I guess the biggest move that I wanted to see was the trading of Zach LaVine. I knew it was going to be difficult, but at the start of it, you still have a little hope that they can get a deal done. But unfortunately, that hasn't happened, and so Zach LaVine returns to the Chicago Bulls, almost stalling their new effort to kind of rebuild with young experience on the fly. And then now everybody, fans, media, and the organization is kind of in a waiting period about nobody knows what to expect now with this kind of mixed bag of vets and young players. So we're trying to. It's a very interesting spot with still having Zach LaVine, but having this young group of guys that you want to see progress. And I guess it's disappointing that they didn't get Zach LaVine traded for anything that they could have gotten. But his contract and just the turn of that second apron for teams, I think caused the stalemate of a Zach LaVine trade. And that's unfortunate, but hey, that's the business. So teams have to worry about, hey, is this worth me going into the luxury tax if I bring him in? And teams have to consider that. And so far, teams are like, we're good. And I don't think it has so much to do with Zach LaVine as a talent. I think it's more so, look, if teams are really, really considering, we're only going over the top for teams that we know are going to make a deep playoff run, and teams are asking themselves, is adding Zach LaVine the missing piece that's going to put us over the top? So that's probably the one move that I wanted to see that didn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, the team is kind of in a period of flux now at the moment as a result of that. They do seem to be trying to take this direction of a new, younger core for sure. But with the likes of Zach in a stalemate and Vucevic as well, it's kind of hard to see how it's going to work and how it's going to gel at this stage. But we might get a surprise. It might work better than we expect, I guess. But I'm not holding out too much hope for that.
Obviously, we're seeing all these videos of Lonzo as well at the minute. Back 5-on-5 and stuff like that. How much of an effect do you think that's going to have on the roster? Because obviously we are looking at Giddey as being the possible future point guard, but then with Zoe returning or supposed to be returning, kind of messes the guard room up again, doesn't it? As Bulls have had a messed up guard.
It mucks it up, definitely. Yeah, it mucks everything up, and I think if you're looking just for interesting, if you're a fan of the team, you're kind of like, I don't know how this is going to work out. But if you just want to see something interesting, look at their current roster. I don't think the adding of Lonzo Ball certainly confuses things a bit, but not for the long term. I think that decision has already been made. Like, hey, it didn't work here. This is more like a happy kind of, hey, look, this guy has, dealt with injuries for so long. Here he is making a comeback to something that he loves to do. And then he'll move on and maybe a team picks him up, maybe not. But he's on the roster, and if he's available to play, right, like he's still a very smart player. So you want him doing something on the roster. I don't think he's looking at Javon Carter minutes, for example. No. I do think that he will get some playing time. But they need to start figuring out what this roster is going to be like for the long term. So that means heavy minutes for Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Patrick Williams. You want at least those three in there, of course, with the addition of Matas, who needs to get minutes as well. So Billy Donovan has a really tough job ahead of him this season with multiple. And here's the thing: when you are going into a season where on multiple different levels of an organization, management, coaching, players, that everybody has different ambitions and different things that they want to get done. It's gonna be a wonky season. You got management that's trying to, retool on the fly. You got Billy Donovan is trying to figure out how to play all these guards, and then you got the players, right? Zach LaVine, who wants to get traded. Josh Giddey's trying to prove that he's a starting point. You have different motivations going on at the same time. It's going to be a weird season. So that's, again, if you're looking for interesting, I think there's interesting to be watched, but it is a mess, though.
Yeah, it is. And speaking of the whole like Josh Giddey and Lonzo Ball scenario, I'm kind of thinking, some people are referring to Josh Giddey as being Lonzo Ball light. But I actually think that Josh Giddey could learn an awful lot from Lonzo Ball because, at the moment we don't know what Lonzo is going to be able to provide. But one thing he's definitely going to be able to provide is knowledge and experience that he can maybe pass on to a player like Giddey to kind of hand him the torch nearly.
I hope so. I hope that's the case. The thing is I don't know if Lonzo views himself as player coach guy just yet. Like I truly believe he feels like he still has an NBA career to be had. At least from what the conversation that he has on his own podcast and other things of that nature. Like if Josh Giddey wants that information, he's gonna have to go up to him and ask him and inquire and pick that out of him. But I'm not 100% sure that it's going to be made readily. I mean, they're teammates now, right? Like, there's, again, the different motivations thing, right? Lonzo's trying to get back and stay in the league at least for a few more years. I don't know if his motivation will be coach up the guy that's going to replace me. I think his focus may be with getting as healthy as possible. So if I'm healthy, I know I'm better than Josh Giddey if I'm healthy. So if I can do that, I can go back to my starting point guard. Again, I don't know. This is just my assumption about the situation. But Giddey is going to get those opportunities, right? I believe he's going to be the starting point guard. You don't make that trade for one of your better or best asset in Alex Caruso and then don't play the guy. So they need to see if Josh Giddey can hold down the fort for the long term. He's got a lot to show, right? He's got to have a consistent jump shot. He's got to be able to guard at least two positions. Based on his size, he should be able to guard at least three positions on some nights. So there's a lot going to be expected out of Josh Giddey. Hopefully he can learn and grow with this team with Billy Donovan and hopefully Lonzo can help him out with that. But again, different motivations is going to be tough to get that done.
Yeah, I know Matt was following Josh very closely in the Olympics. You're quite impressed with him, aren't you, Matt?
Yeah, obviously from what we saw, but you kind of got to also look at what you don't see, and that's the bits that I want to see the improvements in. The defense, the jump shot, stuff like that, which we all know are his flaws in his game. And at the end of the day, he was the top 6 pick. It sort of helped lead a team to the top of the West, and what happens in the playoffs happened in the playoffs. But I think there is a decent player in there. I don't quite think he's a max player at the minute in the terms of how the rest of the draft class are getting these max deals. Like Franz Wagner and Cade Cunningham got one as well, didn't he, from that draft class? But apart from missing out on picks in the deal, I think long term Bulls end up winning that trade just purely because of Caruso may not be in the league in 3-4 years, whereas Giddey's going to be hitting his peak. And obviously, hopefully, that's with the Bulls, whatever his peak happens to be. Did you pay much attention to the Olympics yourself, and obviously his game in the Olympics?
Yes. Look, we hadn't seen the last basketball we had seen of Josh Giddey was on the bench because they couldn't play him down the stretch on OKC. So I didn't want that to be my last thoughts about Josh Giddey going into this season. So yeah, paying attention to what he accomplished for Australia. And I will say he was one of the leaders of that team. That I was glad to see that. You mentioned one of the things that, you know, you can't really like see statistically on a court. But I was looking for that, right? Like, you want your point guard, you got to be able to direct traffic and be that leader. Honestly, that the Bulls haven't really truly had. Like, you know, DeMar DeRozan's influence was definitely felt and was well respected in that way, but a consistent winning effort that galvanizes the group, they haven't had that in a long time. Probably since Jimmy, you know.
Yeah.
And that didn't turn out great. Jimmy was still kind of learning how to have that role. So you can say since Joakim. So, you know, the Bulls are still looking for that. Kobe is not really that guy. Patrick Williams, as we know, is definitely the soft-spoken type, not really the aggressor that we thought that, you know, he should be. So I'm looking for that type of stuff for Josh Giddey, and the passion, right? When they lost, you know, him tearing up, you know, because of that loss. You know, some people, you know, I know in Chicago, they didn't really like Caleb Williams, right? Like crying after a loss in college. But to see him say, like he wants to win. And that's what you want to see. That's what you want from a guy that's going to hold himself accountable. But also, once that's done, you need somebody to hold everybody else accountable. And I thought that was missing as well from this roster these last few years, of people not holding the rest of their teammates accountable for their effort, their lack of defense, miscues, and stuff like that. And then, you know, on top of, hey, he did get to the basket. I mean, almost impacting all the aspects: rebounding, passing, scoring. That's what you want to see, especially at that stage, right? Like, you don't want him playing summer league, so you're not going to see that. But having the Olympics in the same year, I thought was beneficial for Bulls fans to watch him and see what he's going to bring to Chicago.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, one other thing I noticed with him in the Olympics was anytime there was a coming together of players, he was in the middle of it. Particularly against Spain, I remember there's about 3 or 4 flashpoints, and he was straight there. And I think that'll be appreciated by Chicago fans as well, just because, you know, I'm not saying he's a tough guy or any sort of thing, but you know he's got your team's back, and he's going to be there, going to be involved, and that's what you want to see. You want to see him fight for the jersey, and, you know, the name on the front, not the back.
Definitely. So moving on slightly to media coverage, and you know, that's your bag, that's your job. There's been a lot of changes in the way media has to provide content, you know, particularly with the drop off on people actually reading these days. It's kind of moved a lot more to people on social media and things like podcasts. What's your take on how it's developed, and what direction do you think it's going to continue to move in?
One, I think you're right. The written word, it definitely still needed. I don't think it's going away. But, you know, attention spans, they get shorter. You know, people want their information in a minute or less.
Yeah.
So, you know, even podcasts, right? Like this longer form space, like people still love it, and podcasting isn't going away. But most people now are at least trying to consume or get their information in about a minute or less now. So I think the move forward is meeting. The whole thing about making content is meeting people where they're at most times, but then also like, hey, you need to eat your vegetables too. Like, this is going to require a longer conversation, or you're going to have to read this out if you want the said information. And some people are fine with being misinformed, and like, hey, if I don't have it in a minute or less, then hey, that's not my fault. That's you guys' fault for not informing me in a minute or less. And I'm just going to go on my podcast or on social media and say my uninformed opinion on whatever sport or whatever it is. But I think in those podcasts, I think also, and this is a positive, that more people feel like their voices can be heard, despite of not going to journalism school or television production or whatever. You can grow a fan base because you love a sport, you love a team, and you can get your voice out there. And I hope that never goes away. Like, I believe if you want to talk about your something, you can create your own space, develop a fan base, grow it. Like, that's the best part about what we do, right? And what others can do is, look, you can start any podcast, you can start a blog, and I think that's something that we've never seen before, and I think major media outlets are starting to take serious, right? Like, sometimes people that aren't traditional journalists break news now, right?
Yeah.
Like, or make viral headways with an opinion or the way they presented their opinion, and causing ESPN and other major outlets to react to them. I think that's good and bad. But I think if you take notice of it, you mentioned where the space is going. I think that's where it is. They're trying to meet people where they're at. And right now, the fan is speaking up for themselves, and not allowing major media outlets to create the voice for them. Now, it's up to the major media outlets to understand that, hey, if you aren't going to do your job and serve the fan like you should, in your question asking, in how you cover, a team, fans will do it themselves. And for teams, right, for teams involved in this, is important to make sure you're as open as possible, because now you can't control your own message if you don't be open with the media, with fans, about what you're doing. Because guess what? If you're not going to say it, fine, we'll create our own narrative based on the information that we do have, and now that's what people think about your organization. That's something that you don't want to happen. So I think the growth in openness, the growth in fan interaction with teams, now they just can't ignore the fan. Right now, they have to pay attention to what fans are saying on social media, and I think that's the growth, and I think that's where it's going to stay.
Yeah, definitely. And we've even seen a shift. I know this is something you wanted to talk about, Matt, with players.
Yeah, obviously a lot more players now are producing their own podcasts and stuff like that. What do you feel on that? And obviously, I know Zoe's got his podcast at the minute, but is there any other Bulls player you'd like to see start a podcast for any reason?
It's easy, right, to say, oh, I want the biggest star on the team to start a podcast. But as we've seen over the course of the last few years, being the best player or the star player doesn't mean you're a great talker. Like with the popularity of Jeff Teague's podcast, he wasn't a star player, but he's wildly entertaining, and people want to hear what he has to say and his opinion about basketball because he's open and honest, and he's a great storyteller. So you want a mixture of a guy that is open, that is honest, and can tell stories very well. A Bulls player that I think has the potential to do that well. Think Kobe. Like, from my interactions with Kobe, I mean, you guys seen it, right? Some of those post games, him messing with Casey.
Yeah.
In some of those post game interviews, right? You see his joy in what he brings to the game, and he doesn't hide how he feels. He finds a way to explain it that doesn't hurt himself or the team, and I think that goes a long way. So if you get him on a longer platform where he's relaxed and can talk about things, I think Kobe might be the best at doing a podcast.
Yeah,
I think I'd like to listen to that. I think that'd be pretty good.
Yeah, I think Dale and Terry would be a close one as well, just because he's got that energy.
That's a close one.
He does the sort of media stuff already, doesn't he?
He does.
Yeah. Annoys
goes
KC
around with the mic around the locker room.
Yeah, annoys KC with his bottles of water and stuff. Just on obviously Casey Johnson. Obviously, we have had him on the pod before, but going back to what we've said about the way media's changed, did you have to educate Casey in any sort of way, because obviously he's gone from writing and now he's obviously on the TV doing the pod and stuff like that. And obviously it does give us a chance to see his personality a bit more than obviously just words on a screen these days, isn't it? So
yeah, I mean, one, I can't teach Casey anything. I'll always learn from Casey. He's been in the business, as you guys know, for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
He knows all the ins and outs. He knows where all the bones are buried. He's the go-to guy for Bulls coverage. But I will say, like, I would say I have a hand in, and the NBC Sports Chicago as well, right? Casey got an opportunity to do sideline reporting. He did play-by-play, for a game when Adam was out.
That's right.
For a little bit, right? Like, he's had all these opportunities, and we've seen Casey in so many different lights. On the podcasting side, this was his first venture doing Bulls podcast on the Bulls Talk podcast, and seeing his growth as a host and also a talent, I think show forth in his coverage as well, where he was able to not just inform but also entertain. And I thought that was a huge jump from a guy that was just writing and just doing a couple of radio interviews to now really being an one-man entertainment factor and taking on all those challenges, right? Like, no offense, Casey's a bit of an older guy, and most people, they say, hey, I'm great at this, I just want to do this, so don't leave me alone about this other stuff. Casey has never said no on creative items and creative things, and that just goes to show that he is a creative at heart, that his writing is just a piece. It's a big piece and a main piece of who he is as a creative, but you saw these different aspects on television and on digital. I mean, he even jokes on social media, right? Like, he's a great all-around follow for Bulls coverage, because he's not only the most informed, but he will also entertain you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we always say that we have like a pecking order. It's you get your Shams and your Woj bombs, and we wait until KC reports it, and then we believe it. So
yeah.
So, Tony, we're very conscious of time. We know you need to get away, so we will kind of start to wrap it up. But one of the things that we do every year, and we actually got Casey to do it last year, even though he doesn't really like predictions, but we do a few C-Reg UK predictions for the start of the season, and then we look back on it at the end of the season and we go over it. So I'll let Matt run them off for you, and we'll get your answers, and then we'll let you get back to whatever it is you need to get doing.
Okay.
Yeah, basically it's three categories of all obviously just Bulls players related. The first one takes a little bit of explaining because people seem to not quite understand the meaning, but it's the Bulls Unsung Hero. So it's basically the player that just comes in, does the job, and I think Alex Caruso won it last year, which was a bit of a strange one for us too personally, because we thought what he was doing was noticeable. But he is kind of the epitome of that award as well. The previous 2 years where he come in, did a job, and it kind of went a little bit under the radar for the NBA wide anyway. But yeah, so the first one is the Unsung Hero. Which player do you think next year will be that?
That's a good question. Because it's like they also kind of have to, it seems like, take you by surprise a little bit. I'm gonna go with the rookie. I think Montes is for the first time in, I would say, this new regime, aka Mark Eversley's regime. I think they drafted a guy in the first round that is going to make a loud impact. Patrick Williams is a good player. He's a 3-and-D guy. Every team needs that prototype on the team. I think he is going to be better, but he doesn't have a loud impact. He's not going to get the giant aggressive block. He's not going to incite energy in the team and in the crowd by a big ferocious dunk. He's not that type of player. I think Montes is ready in here to make all the loudness that he wants to, and he's gonna make mistakes, but I like aggressive mistakes for young players because you can always coach that up. You don't want to take aggressiveness away from a player. You want to formulate that, and I think he's going to be my unsung hero because I think he's going to make plays that is going to surprise the fan base and excite the fan base.
Yeah. We haven't actually done ours yet. I think we're going to do ours next week when we put ours out. But the next one is the most improved, and Kobe's actually won this the last 2 years that we've been doing it. Whether he can make it a hat trick, who knows? But yeah, who would you say is going to be the most improved on the roster?
Julian Phillips. He was good last year when called upon. Didn't make a lot of mistakes, but his athleticism you can see right from the jump. And I think he's ready to take that next step in his career and make an impact on this team. He's another guy that I'm excited to watch on this roster.
Excellent. Good call.
And the last one, and probably the biggest one, is obviously the MVP, Bulls MVP. I think Zach won it 2 years ago for us, and DeMar won it last year. I think Zach got a lot of votes last year. I think Casey actually voted Zach for it as well. And we saw how that went. Yeah. Who would you say is going to be the Bulls' most valuable?
I'm going to say Kobe White. Because I think we're going to get and we've seen a bunch of different versions of Kobe. I think this is going to be the most comfortable that he's been. Now that he's taken that next step, that Tyrese Maxey step, right? Teams are going to be expecting him now, watching for him. But now that he won't be the point guard, he doesn't have that responsibility and he got better at that. He got better at dribbling. He got better at passing. But now, like, Kobe's the all-time leading high school scorer in North Carolina history for a reason. He's a scorer. That's what he does. So now having him at the 2-guard position, I think we're about to see a decent-sized jump from Kobe's scoring output and hopefully efficiency as well. But definitely just the hardcore points per game numbers. I think that's going to go up for Kobe because I think he's gotten better every year. And I don't expect that to stop.
Yeah. So we have it. We've written down. We have the receipts. So we'll be having a look back over that as the season goes on. But Tony, like I say, I'm very conscious of the fact that you need to get away. We really, really appreciate this. We could sit talking to you for hours, but we will let you get away. So before you do head away, tell us where we can find you and where people can pick you up to follow along.
All right. So that is a big question because as we mentioned earlier, NBC for Chicago is going away. But you can follow me on Twitter at @TonyGill. I don't know where I'm going to be going next. It's going to be a work in progress right now. Picking between a couple different places. So we'll see. Just know I will still be commenting on my social media on Bulls and Bulls games, Bulls items. Hey, I'm a Bulls fan. So like they're always going to be a part of wherever I'm doing. I'm going to be contributing in that space as well. So follow me on Twitter at @TonyGill and make sure you follow where my next step is.
Absolutely, definitely. We'll be watching along and seeing where you go and coming along for the journey with you. Thanks very much,
thanks,
everybody. Get out there and follow Tony Gill.
Yeah, welcome back, and obviously big thanks to Tony for joining us. We were conscious that obviously he had to get away for a meeting or whatever it was, and yeah, it was a good chat, and we could have chatted for longer, but hopefully there's enough to take out of it. And we did get his award predictions, which I think we're going to drop our own next week and put it out on the socials and stuff like that. So keep an eye on that. I know it is, as I mentioned on my video last week, it is a massive part of Bulls Nation. Well,
it is huge.
Bulls, biggest part of it. We know everyone looks forward to it. It just gives us something to talk about, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, we did mention at the start there was some news that we'll maybe get onto, but we didn't get around to it, and that is obviously that Bulls last week, was it Friday, reportedly signed Kenneth Lofton Jr. to Exhibit 10 deal. And obviously it sent Bulls Nation into a little bit of a crazy sort of couple of hours, didn't it? And
yeah,
obviously people saying, where does he fit? Does he fit? All that sort of stuff. And obviously the deal is there's a guaranteed year if he gets it. It's like obviously training camp to start with, battle it out with, you like to think, I think it's going to be on Rob Bittim for that 15th roster spot, which at the minute obviously Bittim holds, both on non-guaranteed deals. Obviously the other option is he fills that third two-way slot. What did you think of it?
Yeah, it's interesting enough, right? I'm not I mean, you got to remember, this is just a training camp deal, right? This is just an Exhibit 10, right? So he's not been signed. Let's just take a swing and see how it goes. And I like that. I think that's something that they need to be doing more and more within this organization. Take a punt, see if it works out or not, see how they get on, and then make the difficult decision if you need to. So yeah, I quite like this idea. He's not your typical player that fits within the mold of the NBA right now, but he kind of if for anyone that followed basketball in the 90s and was around basketball in the 90s, there was a similar kind of statuesque kind of player back then who was a big guy, a big dude, probably didn't look like he should fit in the NBA the way he did. I'm not saying he's anywhere near that level, but he definitely does give, Charles Barkley vibes. Needs to work on a lot of things, but he is very young, so the age thing fits into this new youth movement. He has had very good games and he has had very bad games. Had a little stint with the Jazz and Memphis, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think he did
with the
go
Grizzlies.
to Sixers, but he ended up on the G League team more than.
Yeah, right. And I mean, he's had some pretty strong games in the G League. So look, take a swing on him. If it doesn't work out, it's a 10-day deal. Let him walk.
Yeah, he's one of them players that I think social media has helped get a bit of traction, just because of his physique, and when he comes in and didn't he beat Wemby in a national game or something a few years back as well, and it's for me, give him the two-way. I don't think he's quite ready for a guaranteed roster spot. I don't think he offers anything that Bulls particularly need. He's not a solid 3-point shooter. He's not a solid defender. Yeah, he's
rebounding.
Yeah, kind of. But Bulls fans are a bit all over the place with Adama Sanogo. So because he's undersized and just an absolute unit, basically. But I mean, if he does end up at Windy City, nobody's getting in the paint, are they?
Well, this is true, especially if Adama's down there as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to be trying to rebound
build a brick wall.
Yeah, it might work.
Who knows?
Well, Donald Trump tried it, didn't he? But yeah, didn't work for him.
I'm not touching that with a basketball.
Come on,
not in an election year.
It's been a few weeks. I'm allowed to spark a little bit of controversy. I was professional.
It was all going so well, Matt. It was all going so
well. Yeah, I'm not into politics. It was just, it was just in the news, wasn't it? So, yeah. I don't know what his things, what he want. I know, obviously, politics at the minute is very big in Chicago, isn't it? Because of the whatever it is they've got going on at the UC or wherever it is, and
is it the diplomatic media conference or something like that? I don't know. I'm not sure what it was.
Yeah. It's not basketball, so Not really
No.
interested. I don't follow our own politics enough to care about America's politics either. So
There you go.
know, that's my take on politics. But
see, informative as well as entertaining.
Yeah, obviously this was our first episode back after a couple of weeks. I am suffering a little bit with man flu at the minute, hence why I was a bit more quiet in the interview. But obviously we are back. That's us now until your next holiday in a couple of weeks, probably.
Yeah, I actually am planning something, but I'm not going to talk about it just yet. I think you have an idea of what it might be.
Yeah, leaving me at the start of the season again, probably, but
just for a couple of days, maybe. Who knows?
But yeah, obviously, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Like I said before, if you are on the audio, make sure you head over to YouTube. And obviously, once again, thanks to Tony for joining us. We could have chatted for longer, and hopefully we do manage to get him back on one day. But until then, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And as always, I've been Matt. You can find me on Twitter at MattCRedUK. You can find us on all the socials at CRedUK.
And I'll be on Twitter at Neill UK on behalf of us both and the Fans First Sports Network, and also our special guest today, Tony Gill. Thanks once again to everyone for tuning in. From us both, do remember it is a Chicago Bulls thing wherever in the world you are. And until next time, see red people and go Bulls.